Our guy, Isaac Schade from the Locked On College Basketball podcast. Isaac, thanks as always for hopping on. The ACC stinks, huh? what are we watching right now? It's not. Nothing's good. It's all bad. Nothing's good.
Good night, Brian. It's been real.
Cancel the season. Let's go home.
Dude, it is wild and wacky. Absolutely, especially when you compare that to what our other southern neighbors, which I guess you can't even really talk about the South anymore with the SEC or the ACC because we're all over the place. But man, the SEC comparatively is just eating our lunch right now.
Yeah, the stat I saw today, Isaac, is that this year, SEC versus ACC in college basketball, and that's all the teams, the good ones, the bad ones, and whatever. The SEC is 30-4 head-to-head against the ACC. Like I've seen out of whack numbers before. I don't think I've ever seen anything like that, right, between two actual, in theory, comparable conferences.
Yeah, I mean, it's an absolutely bonkers stat. Obviously, a lot of that comes out of the ACC-SEC challenge where the SEC won 14-2, and then the ACC has just two other wins. And you look at, I mean, it just feels like a nightly thing. Last night, the SEC won two more games over the ACC with Florida beating North Carolina in the Jumpman Invitational, and then South Carolina beating Clemson at home in overtime. Oh, by the way, that was one of the ACC's two ranked teams. And so it's just like, man, the SEC is just dominant over the ACC right now. And Brian, we hate to talk the dollars and cents, but that's the bottom line. Is we're really starting to see the inequity financially maybe starting to show up in the on-court product.
Yeah, is this the cycling, like kind of the reverse cycling, right, of NIL, right? That these other schools have all this other income, so they can essentially put all their donor money toward NIL. Is that what you think we're seeing right now? Is it that big of a talent disparity between the SEC and the ACC right now?
I mean, I truly think it is. And the way you said it is perfect there, Brian, because it's not about like all this money coming in from the media deals isn't just going to NIL. I think that's what a lot of people might be confused about. But with that money able to go to support staff or to other things, and then that frees up the donor money is now more clear to say that can go to scholarships or other NIL opportunities, and that's where the inequity really starts to show up. And you look at it in terms like, let's go back to the ACC-SEC challenge. I remember watching Alabama's support staff, and they've got one person sitting there just watching Hubert Davis call plays into the Tar Heels.
Wow.
And deciphering what that is and then signaling it to Nate Oates so he can tell the players. I mean, it's like that kind of level. Does that win you a basketball game? No. Is it a massive competitive advantage? Absolutely.
Yeah, it's not. We don't have to go back that many years, Isaac, that essentially every major basketball staff was comparable in some way. You had a head coach, you had three assistants, you had a directors of ops that handled logistics and handing the coach the clipboard. You had a trainer and you had a strength guy, and you had some student managers and maybe a GA, and that was it. And every team had the same volume. It's turned into football, right? You look at Alabama, Alabama football, they got 87 analysts, and like half of them used to coach in the NFL. Like when that's spilling down to basketball too, you can start seeing the manpower advantage.
Yeah, you really can, and it plays out with like even the bottom tier SEC teams, and we've seen this now both in football and now as we turn to basketball. The bottom tier SEC teams, like I don't want to dump on them, but like Vandy, which this actually isn't dumping on them. I'm going to praise them. The Vandys of the world are competing with mid to upper tier ACC teams, and it's that kind of thing where it's like, man, if the ACC isn't able to do it there, then what are we looking at?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. That used to be why you wouldn't see numbers like this get out of whack, because, all right, you get your wins against somebody, even if that league's better than this year, it's not going to be crazy. Now, when you're losing to in theory, the dregs of the other league, it's not ideal. As we got our guy Isaac Schade of the Locked On College Basketball podcast. So I think what we've seen, this feels different to me than maybe the last few years. Because the last few years we've seen, all right, the ACC has struggled here in the non-conference, not to this extent, but they haven't won enough, but they had won certainly more of their fair share, and then there was just kind of a weird narrative which got stuck to them for the whole year. And then by the end of the year, they had teams that were very representative, and they just didn't get enough in the tournament. This feels different, right? Like they're still going to get shunted out of the tournament here because they're not going to have the numbers. This year, though, it feels like it'll probably be right? Like I don't know if these teams will deserve it.
I think that is spot on, Brian. Like usually, I think the ACC has received a very unfair narrative. This year, though, it's accurate. And that's unfortunate, but it's part of the talent disparity. It's it's not like all of a sudden, yes, there's been coaching turnover, but you can't just look at it and say, well, there's new coaches, so the ACC's down. It's just like the talent is not there at the same level as it is in the SEC, in the Big Ten, obviously in the Big 12, which has been the top conference in basketball the past several years. Obviously, that's going to be SEC far and away this year. But and we'll see what happens when the tournament comes, because that's been the thing, is that although the ACC has had fewer teams, the ACC has had elite teams, and so you'll still see 3 teams make the Elite Eight and half of the Final Four or something like that, and that's where the ACC has still been able to trumpet like, yes, things are great. Right now, Duke is the only team playing at that level. You've got Clemson that's been strong. North Carolina has underwhelmed. Pitt is kind of in that mid-range. Like SMU is kind of up there as a team that's like hanging around, kind of not as strong as they are in football, but like helping actually. And so it's just like, is the ACC going to be able to produce that level of postseason capability? Right now, beyond Duke, it doesn't appear so.
Is anyone in the league, I mean, besides Duke, and you kind of answered it, like they've got the talent. Obviously, Cooper Flagg is a stud. Like, does anyone have a chance to like make a run? I mean, obviously anyone can make a run, but do you see anybody's roster with the talent that you'd be like, all right, at some point, this is going to get itself together, and that they'll be one of the better teams in the country?
That's a great question. And yes, to your point, Duke is that, although we have to wonder, will their youth show up in postseason time? I think they're going to really, really need those transfer pieces they brought in that are upperclassmen, like Mason Gillis from Purdue. Obviously, Syracuse fans are very familiar with one gentleman who plays for Duke now. I'm just not even going to name him. So
we're quite aware of Malik's status down there. We've seen him play basketball before and acquire a steal or two in his time.
So I didn't want any of those shots to the heart for the Orange fans, but I think Wake Forest has severely underwhelmed. They were talked about as a top 3 ACC team. There is enough talent there, chief of which is Hunter Salas, who was a guy that could have stayed in the draft, decided to come back. I think, we all know how important guard is in postseason, so that could be a big deal. North Carolina has a lot of talent, but they are struggling from the same problem Duke had last year, where there was just no real front court presence, right? Like that is an issue for North Carolina. I think Clemson could be legit. They get Ian Shefflin back. I like to call him the chef, cooking it up down there at Clemson, and they've got Chase Hunter, who's a really strong guard. So a strong guard, a strong big, there's possibility there. Pitt has been looking good. They just don't have the talent that they did last year with Bub Carrington, that dynamic freshman. And so outside of that, I mean, yes, as you said, anybody could go on a run. We saw that last year with NC State, right? But there's nobody glaring right now that jumps out outside of maybe those couple teams.
All right, as we got Isaac Schade, Locked On College Basketball podcast here, we're doing our best around here, Isaac, to not leap off the ledge in regards to Syracuse basketball right now, which is sitting at 5-5, and J.J. Starling still remains out. We haven't heard a date. We're presuming mid-January is best case. Given the state of the ACC, like if and when they get JJ back, can the Orange, like at that point, I'm not saying make the tournament or anything, at that point, can they at least be competitive in this group because of the lack of whatever that's going on right now in the league?
I truly believe so. That's the interesting thing about the ACC is that I was just looking at FanDuel's lines earlier in the day. Duke right now is like a minus two something to win the league. Clemson has actually moved into second in the odds at like plus 300 something. So Duke is far and away the odds-on favorite. But given the unbalanced schedules that we have, like the Big East is the only power conference that still does a true home and home. But with that inequity, it opens it up for a lot of people. And, Brian, there's always that thing of you lose a star player, like Auburn's Janai Broom got hurt last night.
Oh.
I think long-term, he's going to get back, and it's going to be a benefit for Bruce Pearl's team to be able to get experience for other guys to have to step up in the interim. Same is true. I say that because I think the same is true for Syracuse. As long as JJ can get back and be fully healthy, the development that other guys will have in his absence, I think is a long-term positive. It's just that in the meantime, you can't take on too much water if you're the Orange, right? Like, you got Maryland coming up Saturday on the neutral site. Like, that is a very difficult game. And then hopefully there's a get-right game against Bucknell. When is that? Like on the 28th, I think, just leading into New Year's there, leading up to ACC play. And so just like, got to go 1-1, stay at 500 in non-con. And then I think to your good point, Brian, anything could happen in ACC play. I mean, it's crazy right now. I was just looking earlier today at like KenPom numbers and net numbers. The ACC only has 5 teams in the top 60 of the net.
Wow.
9 of, like half the league is outside the top 100, literally 9. The SEC, by comparison, all 16 teams are top 84. 15 of them are top 60. Right? Like, it's crazy what we're looking at. And so to that point, you got to hold serve at home. That's key. And then if you go, like 6-4, 7-3 on the road, you're in good shape.
Yeah, I mean that's the hope for Syracuse. The hope has been far and few between here in the last last few days. So we're grasping at something here as we got Isaac Schade.
And let me say, part of it here is a good thing. Also, Brian, that unbalanced schedule, as you probably well know, Syracuse only plays Duke once,
right?
And it's at home. Like, so when you get that schedule advantage, you got to take advantage.
Yeah, and it's not till February, I don't believe. So hopefully the Orange will be a whole by that point. Yeah. So Isaac, looking back here, all right, that's enough depressing things about the ACC for now. Obviously, the SEC's been great. The Big 12 still has some excellent teams going on. What team out there has impressed you the most so far?
I just read them a little bit ago. It was Auburn, and I'm really, really hoping Janai Broom is okay. He is my front runner for National Player of the Year right now. He does it on both ends of the court. He's so critically important for Auburn, but they are long. They've got athletic guards. They've got other guys that it's not just about Broom, right? They're balanced. They can step up and do it. The question, there's always that thing with a dominant power conference like the SEC. Can you escape the conference without just being bloodied and beaten up along the way? Because, I mean, it's going to be insane. The SEC has 3 of the top 4 teams in the nation right now, 8 of the top 17 in the AP. It's just wild. I like Auburn. I really do like Gonzaga. I know they've taken a couple losses lately, but I think they're a team that's going to go away now and people are going to forget because they're going to go into West Coast Conference play. But Gonzaga, I truly do believe in. Just a couple weird losses along the way. Another team that I really, really do like is Iowa State. The difference is under TJ Otzelberger, they've usually been a really strong defensive team, and they definitely still are. Like their defense is 8th at KenPom defensive efficiency right now. But the difference this year for Iowa State is their offensive efficiency. They're 4th in the nation in that regard. And so legitimately Iowa State is a contender to win not just the Big 12, but to make some noise on the national scene.
All right, it's all good teams to keep an eye out for. It's like always great to chat. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and hopefully the next time we talk, it'll be like less miserable. We'll get to talk about some wins or something from the league or whatnot. We'll figure it out.
Let's go ACC.
Yeah, just win a game or two. Yeah, let's do it. All right, man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate you, brother. Happy holidays.
You as well. There's our guy, Isaac Schade from the Check Him Out, of course, as always, on the Locked On College Basketball podcast. He also does Locked On North Carolina. They're struggling 6-5. 6-5, despite having the defending ACC Player of the Year, R.J. Davis.